Jordan Peterson believes in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. At least that's what you may believe if you saw the recent interview between Alex O'Connor and Jordan Peterson. O'Connor manages to do something that many have sought to do in interactions with Peterson: get answers to what he believes regarding the resurrection of Jesus. O'Connor expertly pins Peterson into a corner and forces him to answer a question regarding his thoughts on the resurrection of Jesus. Did it actually happen? My brother and I covered this topic on a recent podcast episode. I think you'll find this exchange very interesting. Did Jesus actually exit his tomb? Friend of the stream, Alex O'Connor.
He's a big fan of ours.
Big fan of ours. Oh, I muted it. Sorry. The ops messed me up.
I have no dog in this fight. I'm not a Christian.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of Christians are frustrated when they begin asking about Jesus, who's a much more physical entity, right? It's a real human being. It's someone of flesh and blood. It's someone who's physically crucified by the
It's a
Romans.
very different question. It's very different question.
And then
Sorry. It's like, I'm just imagining Christians like, do you believe in Jesus? And what he did, and he's like, that's a different question.
is seen as a physical entity, at least according to the canonical tradition, by his disciples after he died.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks you, do you believe that happened? And when I've seen you ask about that question, you tend to still speak in terms of the psychological and the mythological. I think the frustration is that, as you've just said,
Yeah,
these are
I
two
don't
different
mind
conversations,
frustrating
right?
Christians in that regard either, because the truth of the matter is, with regard to the gospel accounts, that the mythological and the historical are inextricably cross-contaminated.
Sure.
There's no.
I think his point here with the mythological and the historical is that all of the gospel accounts of miracles and spiritual things, Peterson is going to appeal to that's Bible using fictional truth. So he doesn't think any of that actually historically happened, which is, again, it's a weird claim if you think the Bible or the Gospels have some historicity to them. That seem like they contradict each other, because if you believe in the historicity of the Gospels, then why would all of a sudden randomly from one sentence to another go to fictional? It's I don't know. I think it's a little silly reading of the Gospels.
I think it's also a little weird how he almost at the start there with that follow-up question of like how Christians ask him and how it frustrates them, he almost seems to like weaponize it a little bit of like he's fine pissing off Christians, but in reality it's not Christians who are the most frustrated with him. It's actually, I would say, atheists who are getting the most frustrated with him, because they see, dude, you believe the same thing as me, and yet you're arguing for Christianity.
Yeah, I see it on both sides. It's both. It's people that want to know what is true, and you get that on both ends. So you have people like us, and then you have people like Alex O'Connor that are just like, hey, what do you actually believe happened? And then Peterson gets dodgy.
There's no pulling out the historical Jesus, right? That's a non-starter. And why that is, I don't know. It's very mysterious. It's very hard to understand, as are the, let's say, the accounts of the resurrection. Okay, so what do I think about that? Well, I think that denying the historical reality of Christ I think that's just a fool's errand.
Of course.
I don't know why anybody would bother with it.
So a man exists called Jesus. We have that much.
Now, there's a claim that is attributed to Christ that he is the embodiment or the incarnation, the fulfillment, let's say, of the prophet and the laws.
Yes.
I think that's true. Yeah. What does that mean? Well, I think it's in the Gospel of John. I think Gospel of John closes with a statement that's something like, if all the books that were ever written were written about the gospel accounts, that wouldn't be enough books to explain what had happened.
Yeah, if all the things that Jesus did.
Yeah. And there's a truth in that. The truth is that profound religious account is bottomless. And the biblical representations are like that. There's no limit to the amount of investigation they can bear, not least because the text itself is deeply cross-referenced. So there's an innumerable number of paths through it. It's like a chessboard. And so it's inexhaustible in its interpretive space.
That's true.
And that's a problem.
Do you think no one has figured out the Bible, Seth?
I think no one has figured out the Bible.
Yeah, that's essentially what he's saying. Is it's like it's indecipherable. You can't. It's a hodgepodge. It's a chessboard. It's just a mixed bag.
I think like we've pointed to Paul already. I think Paul would probably disagree.
And I just think that there's so many other scholars today that are way more well-read and educated on the Bible than you and I, and way more well-read than Peterson, that instead of Peterson defending Christianity. So that again, it goes back to, it's just frustrating.
Problem too, because it means it's also susceptible to multiple interpretations, including potentially competing interpretations.
I think a lot of people interpret Paul, for example, the earliest New Testament source, as saying that if Jesus did not literally rise from the dead, if there was not a man who stopped breathing and then started breathing again, then your faith is futile and you're still in your sins. That is
That's 1 Corinthians 15. That's what we just talked about.
Christianity is undermined. Now, that means that, and Paul doesn't say sort of believing that that's false is really bad. He says, if you do not believe this proactively, then your faith is futile.
The problem I have with that.
If you don't proactively believe that yourself, then I think when a Christian asks you, do you believe in the resurrection of Jesus? Are you a Christian? I think
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
You must be committed to saying no, at least under that interpretation of Paul. And even if you're not sure, I mean, it's fine if I say to you, do you think that a man physically rose from the dead? And you say something like, well, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there, but I think it has a lot of mythological significance, or I think that maybe it happened in a different sense, or it happened in the sense that good fiction happens, fine. But it needs to begin with that caveat of the simple sort of, historically speaking, I don't know. And I know you don't like to pull out the historical Jesus and logical,
that's a good objection.
But it's an important question to ask.
No, of course. It's a very good objection. So I just did a seminar on the Gospels with a crew of about 8 people. And it was the same crew that walked through Exodus with me with a couple of variations. And I
don't think that's been released yet, but Peterson, I guess, did the series on the Gospels. So we'll get to see him walking through the Gospels in a similar fashion.
I spent a lot of time on the resurrection.
Yeah, I don't know how helpful it will be.
I'm not sure.
Accounts, for example. And of course, that was the toughest, morsel to chew and digest. The thing about the resurrection accounts is that they're all, so I could say something like this, which will just annoy people, but it doesn't matter. I believe the accounts, but I have no idea what they mean.
That's it's on its own, it's not crazy, but just coming from him, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I believe the gospel accounts. I don't know what they mean.
I don't understand them, but I believe in them.
Anybody who's hearing that, and I think Alex O'Connor's could cover this, anybody who's hears that you believe the gospel accounts, what do you mean you don't know what that means? If you believe them, if you believe what the apostles were saying in the accounts, then you're a Christian. the gospels are they're radical claims that Jesus came, he did a bunch of miracles, crazy things. He died and rose again. If you believe that, then of course, you have some meaning there. It's annoying. But that's because, and then he's gonna be like, well, what do you mean by believe?
Yep.
When I say I believe the gospels, it means I live them out. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
When you say you believe the accounts, do you mean, and I hate to be sort of pedantic here, it seems pedantic, but do you mean you believe that these are things that happened such that that's a strange
I
know you don't
thing.
like that. Let me put it this way. If I went back in time with a Panasonic video camera and put that camera in front of the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, would the little LCD screen show a man walk out of that tomb?
This is a great question.
a
I'm
great
wondering if
question.
Alex prepared this question to ask him, because you can't. How do you dodge around that? That's what he
Yeah.
wants to know.
I would suspect yes.
So that to me seems like a belief in the historical event of the resurrection, or at least of Jesus leaving the tomb, which means that when somebody says, do you believe that Jesus rose from the dead? It doesn't seem clear to me why you're not able to just say, it would seem to me yes.
Because I have no idea what that means.
Well,
So it's brain breaking, bro. Because if with that answer, then he's way more closer to Christianity than all of the other previous clips. But because he was so dodgy and so vague, it took us actually getting him here to say, like, I would suspect yes. That's an okay statement. That's a faith statement.
Yep.
Like, if I were to whittle down my belief or my faith, I can't 1000% prove that Jesus walked out of the tomb. I would suspect yes from the evidence I've seen. That's faith. That's a faith statement. So he's there, but then he just doesn't know what that means.
He just walks it back because he doesn't want to. I think like that short of him talking about commitment is him talking about himself a little bit, because I think that he probably, like he just said, he does suspect that Jesus did walk out of the tomb, and yet he refuses to commit to what that calls him to do.
What does that mean for him?
Yeah, the calling. Yeah. So I think like what you're talking about, like with like believe, like in an intellectual sense versus faith, he does believe in Jesus. He does believe in the resurrection, it seems, with that answer.
You would think like that,
But he doesn't have
it's
faith.
still so vague. Yeah, it's still so vague. He doesn't have faith, and then his belief in Jesus, I still don't know if it is an intellectual exercise for him, if it's a genuine faith and belief that this happened. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know, which is why, I don't know, is Jordan Peterson wrestling with God or a wolf in sheep's clothing? I would say for now he is a wolf in sheep's clothing, that Christians are willfully letting him into their circles, their homes, to
it's
infiltrate
also
Christian speak.
Yeah. I think it's a little too ironic that as he is having these interviews and these discussions and everything, he's coming out with a book called, I think, We Who Wrestle with God. It's just a little, I don't know, it seems to be I mean, he's gonna make a huge profit off of it.
A ton
So,
of
like,
money. And most of the people that are going to buy this book are going to be self-professed biblical Christians. I'm going to go on a limb and say that the most people that are going to buy this book are going to be self-professed Christians. That seems a little wrong.
yeah,
You can read what you want. I might read it. It
intention
seems
there
interesting. Yeah.
But just him writing it, like the intention there is like, okay, well, like you're writing this book, but you're going on tour and you're having all these interviews and you're giving like is it like, I don't know, it's like if you can't even answer it in an interview or in a lecture, if like what are you going to do in your book other than just reword exactly what you've been saying?
It's going to be all of this, with just more text. Yeah. I don't think we'll get any real answers, which is why I would advise Christians just be cautious. Be cautious with Jordan Peterson's consumption for his theology. Be cautious with platforming him, and be willing to stand on business a little bit. I don't like the rise of cultural Christianity. You have Jordan Peterson, you have Russell Brand, and people of these natures that are exploring Christianity in a very cultural sense because they like what Christianity has given society, but then they don't believe in any of the truth claims of Christianity. I think that there's a flaw there. But maybe we'll be able to explore that a little bit deeper in a future episode. This has put a pin on what we discussed in the podcast. Jordan Peterson is profiting off of Christian text, history, and iconography. He has successfully created a fictionalized theology that extracts many of the important objective and historical truth claims and replace them with subjective interpretive truths that you can find in your high school English class analysis of literature. To Peterson, the resurrection of Christ is significant to the extent that any radical fictional truth is significant. His use of Scripture has created, for a lack of a better term, an unholy alliance of biblical Christians and atheists, both of whom genuinely care about the truth of what actually happened 2,000 years ago in Jesus' tomb. To this end, we will have to wait and see if Peterson's period of theological discovery is to a genuine pursuit of truth. Or perhaps it's more slightly dangerous as he muddies up scriptural interpretations and historical readings to suit his own aim, an aim that has brought him fame and fortune. But until that has been settled, those of you who are interested in learning the truth, proceed with caution. If you are interested in more discussions of topics such as this, join the Oh Bro Show bi-weekly Saturday streams. We'd love to chat and interact with viewers. Hope to see you there. God bless.